Welcome, baseball fans, to episode 4 of Baseball as Intended. This is YeYo alongside Jon. Jon, it's Sunday night. Happy Sunday night.
Thank you. I am, as you know, very under the weather, just scratching and clawing for every breath the last 2 days. But I'm happy to be here. How are you doing? How was your week?
I mean, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather as well, but Cal Rip can play for like 3,500 straight games, right? So we're here another week.
We're
another
just like
episode.
him. We're just like him.
We're just like 3,400 games away or episodes away from
Correct.
breaking his record. But,
Correct.
props to us. We're here. Not a whole lot going on in the baseball world, but there's still some things that we'd really like to discuss. Obviously, we talked last week about the Super Bowl, which we kind of have to start with that. But we're going to be talking about arbitration. Corbin Burnes is not happy with that. There's some injuries in spring training after pitchers and catchers reported to, obviously, spring training. NBA All-Star weekend is this weekend, going up probably starting in about an hour or so. So we got some ideas that we'd like to discuss about maybe baseball All-Star weekend. But first, I would like to say that last week I did say that the Chiefs were going to win 31-28. And the final score was what? Like 34-31. I was very close. I had them by 3. You said Mahomes was going to rush for a touchdown. That didn't happen. You said the Eagles. That didn't happen. So, you're negative on your bank account, I'm assuming.
Yeah, but I feel like I made the right picks.
That makes no sense.
Like it didn't play out that way, but I feel like Mahomes should have rushed for a touchdown and the Eagles should have won. So I feel like I was just unlucky, to be honest with you, which is how I usually feel. I did think actually when he was hobbling towards the end zone, and I told you there was one where I was like, I think he might actually get there. No, but it was a good game. I love Rihanna. I absolutely love Rihanna. So I forgot how many hits she has till they just came out one after the other. But even as much as I love Rihanna and I loved it, it's not like an all-time great halftime show, right?
No, and I think I was expecting also somebody else. Like, you know how they always have like guests or featurings and stuff. She
Yes.
has some big time featuring. She's Rihanna, right? She can ask whoever and
Jay-Z.
whoever.
I thought Jay-Z was coming out at some point.
Yeah. So that was kind of weird. That nobody
good, though.
there, but it was
Like,
solid. It was solid. It's
We
just
were
not
bobbing our heads the whole time. We were like, this is good. It was all good. It was very solid.
just not an all. It's not a top 3, top 5
No.
Super Bowl halftime show, but it's one that you're gonna be like, oh, that year was solid. It was still good. There's too many good songs she can sing. She's too good of a singer for it to suck. And
She's great.
yeah. So
And it felt like we missed her a little bit. She was, I mean, I'm acting like I'm Rihanna's #1 fan in the world. I'm not. But I like her and I hadn't seen her in a while. And I was like, she's back. It's nice to see. And it was nice to take my mind off, all my bets going down the drain.
well, at halftime, I thought, I know the Eagles were up, but I was like, everything is going the Eagles' way, but the Chiefs are still too close. So
Yes.
it feels like it's gonna be a Chiefs game at some point. And that some point happened kind of like towards the end of the third quarter into the fourth quarter. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes just clicked and they just couldn't stop scoring touchdowns. The Eagles made no adjustments to it, which the Chiefs did, and they came out on top. Again, there was a holding penalty there that people are not happy. I hate when people say this, like, oh, you just can't throw the flag there. Well, it's either a holding or it's not a holding. And it's just weird that they let them play all game, basically, and then they did throw that flag there. But that play, I don't think it decided necessarily the game. I still think the Chiefs are going to win.
It kind of did. No, I get what you're saying though. The rules are the rules, right? And it was not some wild call. It's different, even I think, than pass interference. Because if they're both in the end zone and it's a bang bang play, it's like, okay, it's a jump ball. But he stopped him from getting there. But it was a good game. Again, I had a little bit of money on the line. I no longer have that money. But there are bigger money issues involved in baseball that we would like to get to.
Oh,
So, you like that? A little bit?
that was a great transition.
Thank you.
I like it.
Arbitration, we hear about it all the time. We don't really hear, we get the reports during the offseason, but then the players show up and they start talking about it. And Corbin Burnes went through arbitration and he is not happy. So he was asking for, let me look at it here, 10.75 million. He got basically 10 million on the dot. And because of that, his exact words, there's no denying that the relationship, is strained at this point.
It's damaged.
What do you make of that? What do you make of that?
So I think number one thing, I think arbitration sucks for everyone involved. Like it's one of those things where you try to avoid the conversations, right? You try to avoid going into arbitration. I think this past year there were over 200 players eligible for arbitration, and they only ended up going like 19 of them. So that tells you that both sides agree, let's not do this. It's not good. From a business perspective, obviously you got the team, especially Milwaukee, who doesn't like to spend. They've shown that they don't like to spend. They're going to try to save a little over $700,000 with Corbin Burns. And he's just, that's your guy, right? And he's your guy, and you got to keep him happy. The thing is that now you know he's going to either ask for a trade or whenever he's a free agent, he's gone. It's when you're making 10 million, what is an extra 700,000? I don't think it's
crazy to say that, right?
Yeah.
Like to say, oh, it's not worth it over 700,000. But then I also get, well, where do you draw the line? Is 700,000 not a big deal? Is $1 million not a big deal? Is 1.5? It's so weird.
I think it's more percentage wise, right? Like 700,000 in a $10 million contract is not as much as a $3 million contract, right? Corbin Burns is producing at a $40 million a year pace. He's with the Groms and the Verlanders that are getting paid 40. Give him the 10.7, 10.8. Avoid arbitration, and maybe it will give you a chance to sign him long-term when he's a free agent if you do get there. But I guess at this point, they obviously shown that, hey, we don't want to sign him. What I thought was interesting, I read an article that said how, they basically said something along the lines like, what did they use to kind of win that arbitration case? Because they did win it. And it was like, well, we didn't make the playoffs. It was not Corbin Burns' fault. Can I just say that? It wasn't his fault. You literally traded Josh Hader. You don't want to pay anybody. You have a bad team. It wasn't Corbin Burns' fault. The fact that they actually won it, it's still crazy to me.
Yeah, so before I go into my spiel, let me ask you one more thing. So when these arbitration things kind of get out of hand, and I don't want to say out of hand, but like obviously he's left with a bad taste in his mouth. Do you blame the organization? Do you blame him? Do you think it's equal parts? Like who do you fault here?
I think a lot of players probably felt the same way he felt. He probably is just being like, I don't want to be in. Maybe he's more vocal than other players. I think it's both sides, right? If you got to the arbitration case, it was probably both sides because, I mean, obviously the same can be said for a player like, hey, 700,000 is not that much. It's just whatever. I just think, again, 19 players went to arbitration. 13 of them were won by the team. So that's something that what does that tell you?
I don't know. I mean, it could tell you that, based on the formulas and the metrics they use, that the players are asking for too much. I don't know. I'm trying to look at it objectively because it is weird. Like you said, Corbin Burns, if you're in Milwaukee, this is your guy now. And you kind of left him on the boat alone last year. He was trying to get you into the postseason. But I do think there's a reason probably that a lot of the other players and teams settle. Maybe it is reasonable what gets offered. I think there is a little bit of maybe this was a fair offer for Corbin Burns and maybe he should have taken it. I don't know really specifically, but what I will say is I don't know how I feel about him getting so emotional about it in a way. And I do understand the disrespect. I don't know exactly what was said. He did say they didn't attack my character. There were no real personal shots, which is, what you would expect. But this has happened to a lot of guys. And you do hear a lot of people say they're frustrated, they're disappointed. It's not making a lot of news, but Kyle Tucker lost his arbitration case as well. And I think he was at $7.5 million from him and his agent. And the team was at $5 million, and he got $5 million. And he said, yeah, it was a little weird, but I'm committed to the team. I'm going to be here a couple years. I want to help us win. I feel like that's probably how you should approach it. I think everyone knows you're upset. I think everyone's different, right? He took it a little bit personal. I don't know necessarily, this happens in baseball. This happens in people's jobs. You go for a raise, they tell you you're getting this, that. It's not always all that personal. So I don't want to, as weird as it looks, I don't put all the blame on the team. A lot of teams go through this. It usually turns out okay. He's not the first. He won't be the last. But it's a fascinating little part of off-season baseball negotiations.
It is a business, and this is all something that all professional athletes say, right? At the end of the day, it is a business. He made it public, and which makes me think, and I have no inside information. Obviously, I know nothing. But I think there may be something happened in the past. And we go back to last year, how the Brewers traded Josh Hader, which was a surprise trade at the time. You traded to the another National League team in San Diego. We talked about Josh Hader still being the best lefty reliever.
Yes.
Devin Williams was very vocal at the time about how unhappy he was and how dare you trade our best bullpen arm? Now I'm by myself here. Like, that just goes to show kind of like culture, right? And maybe something like Kyle Tucker, he's not as vocal because you don't hear a lot of those things from the Astros. So maybe that culture,
right.
Players want to play for the Astros. Players want to play for the Braves. Players don't want to play for Milwaukee. Maybe that's what it is. Okay, well, I'm just basing it off what we know, right? And look outside looking in, where it's like, hey, they don't want to pay. It's obvious that they don't want to pay. They're trading them away. And he's like, why do I even want to be here
right.
then? Especially he knows what he's worth. And, he won the Cy Young in 2021. He finished, I think, 7th in 2022. He's a sub-3,
Yep.
led the league in strikeouts, 200 plus innings. Like, he's a workhorse. So he knows he's worth a lot more than $10 million, but it's also part of the business. And I think, maybe it would have been better for him not to say much, but I don't know exactly how it was brought up. If somebody asked, or if it was just like, somebody asked me about this.
Yeah.
Like, I got to say
and we
something.
we don't know how it was presented. It could be either way. It could be that they went in there and maybe people that have been in a lot of arbitration hearings say, the Brewers were very nice. Like, it wasn't that bad. Or maybe it was horrible. We don't know. But I think it's kind of fascinating. Maybe the Brewers, like we said, maybe they know they're trading this guy. Maybe he can be unhappy. Maybe the way they run their organization is, $750,000 here, $750,000 there. It adds up. Maybe that's their plan. Who knows?
Yeah. Arbitration sucks. Again, I think we can all agree with it. It just sucks for him. He probably is seeing it where, we know arbitration is for year 4, 5, and 6. This guy's in the prime of his career. He's trying to get paid. He knows there's only one prime of your career, unless you're Barry Bonds. But he's just trying to get paid. I don't blame him for wanting to get paid.
Not at all.
It's more about, I don't know if it was the right way to handle it. We don't really see players being that vocal when it comes to like negotiations or whatnot, which, by the way, there's something that Manny Machado, he talked about, I'm ready to opt out next year, right?
No tiptoeing around
nothing.
It. He said, I'm getting a bag.
Yes. Now, I think isn't it weird for him to say that? Like, injuries can happen. You can have a down year and then you have to opt in. But because of that comment, apparently they started working on a new year or a new deal. And Machado is asking for 10 years, $400 million.
400.
And apparently they were $150 million apart, or $115 million apart. That's a big gap. So that's, again, another player speaking up on like the business side of baseball, more his contract. But the balls of Machado to be like, yeah, I'm opting out. I don't care what, like, isn't it too early for that?
I was stunned, to be honest with you, because it's, they gave him a big contract when they gave it to him. Yeah. And I understand his point that, the market changed and all that, but they didn't get him on a bargain. They paid him, and, and they've put a good team around him. They've brought in some pieces.
They're trying to win. And this can be a distraction, right? Like, yeah, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the front office was probably high-fiving each other for another great offseason. And they said, hang on, guys, Manny's opting out. And, how much does he want? $400 million. We'll see. Does he get it?
If he has another year that he did in 2022, yes, he gets it. But that means Otani gets 600. Like, Otani, I'm thinking Otani's getting 10 for 500, somewhere along that. But
oh my God.
I mean, right? If Manny Machado gets 10 for 400, you cannot tell me that Otani would not get 10 for 500, right?
No, he brings something no one else brings.
Yeah.
He's a really good hitter. He's a really good pitcher. I mean, it's corny to say he's two players in one, but there's not really another way to describe it. Yeah, he's gonna, man.
Yeah, he's definitely. I mean,
Good
they're
for
both
Manny.
getting paid anyways. Otani had a 9.6 WAR season. Like, just think about that. He's literally two players into one. So, again, it's his free agent year. We'll see. Mets and Dodgers are always going to be probably in conversations with both of them.
Love it.
But Otani is on a free agent year. He's going to be playing the World Baseball Classic. But pitchers and catchers reported, and
Yes.
same thing with Corbin Burnes. He reported he's healthy. There's some pitchers that are not healthy. We're talking about DeGrom got a couple days to be like, hey, sit down. You're having some discomfort in his left side of his thin body. We got Kershaw. Something happened. He's out of the WBC. They say
No
hamstring.
one really knows the Kershaw one, right? He was like, I'm not doing this travel
I think
thing.
a lot of the times they just say hamstring because there's no way to like really prove it. It's kind of
Right.
tight. Nestor Cortez hamstring as well. He's out of the WBC for Team USA. So all of a sudden we're talking about Team USA not having the best pitching, and you lose two of your starters. Now you really go down. The big one, Frankie Montas out of the Yankees, possibly out for the year. I mean, this is what players or teams are afraid of when we talk about the WBC, spring training, contracts. Players don't want to report to spring training until they get signed because injuries can happen. They're part of the sport. How do you feel about this? I know you're probably happy about the DeGrom injury as a Mets fan, but other than that,
that is just unbelievable that you would say that.
yeah, I know.
I'm not happy he's injured.
He's not injured, by the way. He was throwing baseball
no,
today.
it's just tightness. Yeah, he's fine.
That's how he starts.
Before. Yeah. I'm happy I don't have to deal with this as a Mets fan. Does that make sense? I'm not happy he's injured at all. Like, I'm not one of those guys that players leave, the team I root for, and I wish them success forever. But with DeGrom, yeah, like, just for baseball, love watching him pitch, all that. But I'm glad I don't have to deal with this because it's tightness, and then he throws a bullpen and he looks good and he's scheduled to pitch and then he just doesn't pitch. And then this is kind of how it goes. So if you're the Rangers and their GM, Young, you took a gamble a little bit. And it's hard to say that with DeGrom. But, this has become a thing now. I don't think we can say, well, he doesn't really have injury issues. He definitely does. The good thing I would say if you're the Rangers, almost every example of DeGrom, when he does pitch, he's dominant. It doesn't feel like these things linger in a sense. Like he's not pitching and struggling and trying to find it. He'll miss time, but when he's back, he's back. And maybe last year he was off, more than usual, but he was still pretty good. But every time he goes out there, he is good. So you got to find a way to just, again, I know it looks bad, spring training, take him out, but yes, if he felt tightness, relax. And they're saying, oh, it's the cool weather and okay. Say whatever you have to say. I don't blame you. Don't, get him hurt. Take all the precautions because if he's out there opening day and he pitches a good amount of innings, no one's going to care about this at all. But it does feel like the same old thing. And this is probably why, he wasn't getting the looks and the contracts that he wanted.
I think that's what it is, where we know his injury history, right? He's coming off a little bit of an injury year again. Some tightness is never good. That's how he starts. But, obviously, if he's going to miss a week or two, you want him to miss a week or two in February, right? Not in June and July. But again, that's kind of like a wait and see kind of thing. It's not a Frankie Montas injury, which is elbow surgery. You're out for 9 months and you're done, right? Now, we talked about this in one of our episodes where we're talking about Trevor Bauer. And we knew that, injuries were going to happen, right? Injuries happen.
It's a guarantee.
It's always going to happen. Now, the Yankees can afford to lose an arm, which they did. They still have Garrett Cole. They still have Nestor. Nestor should be fine. Nothing major there. Yep. They still have Carlos Rodon, obviously, after signing him as a free agent. But this is where, is somebody going to look at Trevor Bauer? Or is it going to be more of a midway through the season? I don't know. Again, there's only one major injuries out of the spring training already, but is it gonna happen in spring
Yeah,
training?
this is probably not the spot, right?
Yeah,
With
not
the
the team.
Yankees.
Yep.
Right. But it shows you just how easily that, because they're losing their what, he was going to be their fifth guy, right? And probably if he was slotted in at 5, probably one of the best number 5s in baseball, but they can survive this. They throw in, Herman right there, and they're okay. But what about a team that loses a really good number 3? I think that's the team that looks at Bauer and says, maybe, he wasn't convicted. His suspension has been reduced. However you have to justify it. And I'm not even saying you have to justify it. We don't really know all the details of that, but just from a PR thing, this is why I said, when we talked about it, I think he gets signed probably towards the end of spring training, because this has all happened now, a couple injuries in a week. Guys aren't even really ramped up yet. Give us another 3-4 weeks of this. I think, he needs to stay in shape, because he's going to get a call.
Well, he's going to stay in shape. I think he's going to stay in shape. Maybe the Texas is a good spot if the Grom goes down. Do you want to make a little side bet, board bet kind of thing? I say he doesn't get signed. If he gets signed, it's during the season. I don't think he signs before, like during spring training. How comfortable are you with making a little side bet on Trevor Bauer? I say Trevor Bauer.
What about April? You think April?
I still think I wouldn't be shocked if he never pitches in the MLB again. I'm not saying that's going to happen.
Okay,
but
give me till the end of April. I'll make a little side bet with you. I think he gets signed by the end of April.
Okay, I think if he signs, it would be after April. So there we go. Trevor Bauer. We'll see what happens there. We got a side bet, guys. We gotta write this one down.
You rooting for Trevor Bauer. Isn't that fantastic?
I mean, it feels like you've been rooting for him. So
no.
Just giving you an extra bump.
But you're 100% right. Look at a team like Texas. If you get a healthy degrom and they go out and sign Bauer and he comes back and he's like, close to what he was, all of a sudden, what a great 1-2 you just kind of pulled out of the air. You're not going to have to pay Bauer all that much. The Dodgers are doing that for you. So it's interesting.
You got to pay Bauer the same amount the Brewers didn't want to pay Corbin Burns, which is interesting. About $750,000 there. But
yep.
Yeah, again, we haven't seen Bauer in more than a year. Last time we saw him, he looked good, but I think a lot of teams are just going to stay out of that. They don't want the whole drama and attention that will come with that. And that's why I think if he signs with a team, it will definitely be after April, even if he's signed. I don't expect him to sign with any team. So we'll see.
Interesting. One thing about the Nestor injury, which seems like it's going to be nothing, because I just saw that he threw a bullpen and he was basically like, I'm fine. We were talking about the WBC and how, it seems like, and I don't think owners come out and really say much on it, but owners, front office, they don't love, maybe some of their guys going out, probably especially pitchers. Does this kind of make you understand their perspective? Because Nestor's injury seems like he noticed a little something early. He said, hey, a little tight. What happens if he's out there pitching, in a high intensity game? If he's out there against the DR, if he's out there against Puerto Rico, Mexico, whoever it may be, does he push through that? Does he in a big spot just say, hey, I've got a little tightness in my hamstring, I'm out? Or does he push through that and, who knows what happens? Is that a valid concern, you think?
I mean, I said it last time where I can understand from the business side of things, I 100% understand it. From a fan perspective, I want the best players out there.
Yeah.
And I was talking with my boy Esteban. He works for and writes for Fangraph. And we were talking about this actually today. And it was kind of like, we just need some sort of insurance where, hey, okay, players are going to go play at the WBC. If they get hurt in the World Baseball Classic, the clubs are getting their money back somehow. So there's some sort of insurance there. And I think that would definitely help. Obviously, I don't know how much players would actually push themselves in the WBC even before the game. Maybe in the middle of the competition. Yes, I can 100% see it.
Right.
But from a business perspective, you don't want to have your 300, 400. We were talking about these crazy contracts. You don't want to have those players out there. And that's your investment. You can lose your investment. And for them, they would rather win a title with their own team than the Team USA win a medal for it.
100%. And that's how they should view it. I mean, they own that team, right? That's what their responsibility is. I think even with the insurance, and that's a really good point because teams get insurance on their players and these big contracts all the time. But no matter what, I think a lot of times it's not even the money. You just don't get that player playing for you if he gets hurt. You know what I mean? You look at the Giants in the offseason, this is kind of a weird example, but they're not just happy they got their money back. They're bummed out because they don't have a Correa and they don't have a Judge and everyone else is gone now. They're not out any money, but they're out the players. There's only so many elite players. So I think you look at some of these big owners that spend big money on these players. I don't know how much, obviously they don't want to pay someone to not play, but it's like, we need you on the field. You know, we can't spend this money anywhere else. We're not going to be able to replace you. And I think it's going to be, we're going to talk about it a lot because it's a dynamic that's really probably never going to go away with the WBC. But it's interesting.
I mean, 100%. And if you're, for example, the Phillies owner, you just gave, and I've mentioned this before, you just gave Trey Turner $300+ million,
right?
And he hasn't played a game for you, and he's going to be playing for Team USA. Obviously, you know, again, injuries can happen. It can happen in spring training. They're going to get reps in spring training or whatever. WBC, you just ramp it up a little bit faster.
Right.
But injuries can happen as well. But, you know, you try to limit the risk involved in your you know, investments. And players are investments for owners and clubs. It's just how it works.
Huge investments. Yeah. I mean, those salaries you mentioned, those are, you know, big businesses. You could buy big businesses for that amount. Those are investments.
And you know where they can get hurt as well? All-Star games.
Saw it coming. Saw it coming.
That was a good transition again. We'll talk about the All-Star game. So, you know, obviously we talked about the Super Bowl. It's over. NFL, it's over. Pro Bowl, I think we can all agree that the NFL football All-Star game is the worst. And they have so many things that they can do with skills and whatnot. Now they're literally playing flag football. I understand it's more of a physical sport. Right. You know, the head injuries and all this. I understand it. I just feel like they probably could have done a little bit of better job. But this weekend is the NBA All-Star weekend. You know, first thing that comes to mind, dunk contest, 3-point shootout. We've had some historic moments in these competitions. And it got us thinking, what about the MLB All-Star game? You know, obviously we know that the All-Star game matters, right? If the AL wins, then, you know, they get home field advantage and whatnot. And they've tried to make changes to make it matter, not necessarily in the voting. The voting is still kind of
horrific.
But you know, what are your thoughts on baseball's All-Star weekend? Which I must say, I was there this past All-Star weekend in LA, and it was pretty amazing. But
you're a star. That's where you belong.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
No, I think I don't have much bad to say about MLB and how they do the All-Star game, to be honest with you. I like that they make it competitive. Obviously, football, they can't make it really all that competitive because you have to go all out in football to put a good product on the field, and guys just aren't going to risk their health, you know, for a game that doesn't matter. In baseball, you can play a pretty high level of baseball without really risking, you know, too much. I mean, like you said, anything can happen. But I like and I'm not always on board with everything MLB does, but the changes they've made to the home run derby, I think, are great. I think the All-Star game in and of itself brings some appeal because you see a lot of those star versus star matchups that you won't get, you know, other places, especially because it's interleague play kind of. And so I think that adds a little bit to it. It's not quite as much like the NBA. The NBA All-Star game is just highlight reels, right? Because they don't play, you know, much defense. So you don't get that in baseball. It's not just full of highlight reels, but you do get a high level of best on best. And I think the NBA and the MLB probably have two of the best. I know NHL is pretty fun as well. A lot of people don't follow it, but even that follows kind of the skills competition. They both have a futures, you know, style game, the Rising Stars, the futures. I don't know that there's too much different other than an MLB skills competition. That would be really fun, right? Whether it's something stupid like we see them do it overseas, the bunting. I would love to see some sort of stolen base competition. I have no idea how that would come out, but seeing Billy Hamilton try and steal off Yadi Molina would be a blast. Things of that nature would be fun, but I'm not the biggest creative brain, so I don't
Yeah.
really know what to come up with. I'm sure you have some good ideas.
Well, I think, there's a lot of things that they've done to try to make it more entertaining for the viewer at home, right? Like we saw in-game interviews. We love those. Every half inning,
Yes.
there's an interview. They're playing. You get to meet, or it feels like you get to know some of the players, so that's always cool. Home run derby is always electric. I think, I remember how they had to change how it was done because the 10 out thing, they were just taking ball after ball after ball,
Yeah.
regain their
But
energy and
they
start
did.
swinging back. They fixed it.
Credit to them, right? That was awesome, and it worked.
Julio put on a show. I do think some additions, like the skills competition, maybe who's the fastest, because we always want to know who the fastest player is, right?
Yeah.
And the fastest players will tell you, I'm the fastest player. So go around the bases. Let's see who the fastest. I think something like that would be cool as well. I think the AL NL kind of thing used to be more of an old school type, right? Because it was two different leagues. First, they weren't playing against each other. And then even when Interleague started, the NL still had the pitcher hitting, right? So
Right.
something that the NBA did was kind of go away from West and East and just had the two top voting getters and do a draft. A draft of a MLB All-Star team would be
Would you love that?
amazing. I would love that.
Yeah.
I would love that. Imagine I don't know, the top two voting, leading vote getters. You got Mike Trout and Otani. They're going to be in two different teams. That's cool. And then they start a draft. So I think that would be something cool. Again, I don't think they'll do it. Obviously, they want this game to mean something because I think the one in Milwaukee in 2013, whatever it was, ended up in a tie. What does this mean? It's too boring. Obviously, you can't push the pitchers too much because
Right.
they all have restrictions based on the club's investments. We go back to the same thing. But a draft would be kind of cool just to change things up.
It would be. It's tough, like you said, because I don't know how you reconcile that with having the game matter, right?
Yeah.
But
You can't have both things. It's one or the
you
other.
can't have both things. And now that you say it, I'm trying to think what I rather have. I don't know. I think the draft would be awesome if you could still keep the intensity in the game.
I mean, I think I would rather have the draft and just decide who's going to have home field in the World Series, whoever has the best record. And then you go to run differential if they have the same record. Like, make every game of the regular season matter, right? Because the All-Star, regardless, the voting kind of sucks. And it's, people just vote 50 times for their players and not necessarily the best players are there, at least in the starting, starting lineup.
Yeah.
So I would say just, hey, give us a draft and just go back to best record. That's the home field advantage for the World Series. Like, again, the voting is weird. It's not like, I don't know. If I'm a Red Sox, are the Yankees they're out of it? Are they really going to play hard to win because the Red Sox are in first place? They're not going to want me. I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the voting is tough for me to say what the fix is because you can leave it up to the fans and they're not going to get it right. But then we look at the Hall of Fame voting and, these professional writers that should get it right don't get it right either. You could go to a players and coaches vote. There's always going to be discussion. I am pretty happy. I want to give props. I'm pretty happy with what MLB has done. I think they're slowly starting to figure out how to grow the game again a little bit. People always act like it's not growing. It is. But the MLB All-Star Game has gotten a little cooler, if you want to say, hip, whatever you want to say.
I like it
And it's
too.
awesome.
I think
Yeah.
I like it too. I just thinking about something different. I think that's where my mind went when I saw what the NBA did and the drafts. And I'm like, that would be so cool in baseball, And
And the way they did it was so fun. I remember, last year when it was KD and leaving the guy for last, and they were talking about it and they were laughing. It was like, we know what's going on here. And if you get a little bit of that personality going on, it's awesome because you want the players' personalities to shine too.
Yep.
So, Everyone except Mike Trout, who has no personality.
Well, there you go with the hate of Mike Trout. But you know what? It wouldn't matter because he would be the guy drafting. With that, walk us off, John. What are you looking forward this week? Again, we're closing in on the World Baseball Classic. We're about 3 weeks away from that. Not much going on.
Not much going on. I love the little things that we see, though. The little clips from the stars pitching to the stars hitting. I know they're not 100%, but you get those little clips. You kind of start to get a feel slowly in the next week or two of who's having a good camp, who's not. But it's interesting to see. I think you got to keep an eye out on the injuries. Every team has their own little position battles that are not necessarily huge news, but they matter. So you watch that. But I think the injuries, see who makes it through spring training completely healthy. And then take an eye to the WBC, see, aside from the great games and all that, see if anyone kind of plays themselves onto a major league team, right? Because that is a showcase. Everyone says they're playing for their country and pride and all that. And for the most part, I think that's true. But a lot of people see it also as an opportunity of there's a lot of eyes on this game. I'm a fringe player. I'm out of the league. I've been in the league. What better way to kind of show you can still play? So I think that's kind of a, sub drop of what goes on in the WBC, but it's still something to kind of look for.
Yeah, obviously not every team has every position on lock, and there's still some players that are going to be playing for playing time and roster spots and all that. So that's always cool. Again, for me, it's World Baseball Classic. I'm excited for
spots,
that.
Right?
Yeah.
How many teams are looking for that lefty reliever? Tons of them.
Yep.
And it gets decided, here shortly. It's not the sexiest thing to follow, but it pays dividends down the line.
Yeah, it matters in October, and we've seen that. Before. But that will wrap it up for us, episode 4 of the Baseball as Intended podcast. Good stuff, and we'll see you next week at the episode 5, and have a good one. Make sure to follow us again: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I think that's all of them.
You got them.
We'll check you out next week. I appreciate you.
See ya
later.